Esrei, we were finishing the bracha, we were up to the middle end of the bracha of Ala Tzadikim, Ba'al Chasidim, Ba'al Ziknei Amcha Beis Yisrael, Ba'al Pleitat Sofrim, Ba'al Geirei HaTzedek. I wanted to say something about the Geirim, about righteous converts. The Art Scroll book on Shemona Esrei, the Amida it's called, it's a blue book, very, very good book with lots of little excerpts of Mefarshim from everywhere. It said there, very interesting, it quoted the Chavetz Chaim, and it said this following story. It says, Geirei HaTzedek is referring to righteous converts, not the Erev Rav, not people who join up with the Jewish people with ulterior motives and their own self kind of promotion of their own motives, like in Mitzrayim was for their survival. They were called the Erev Rav. To be evil all their lives and then attach the Jewish people to be saved from their destiny, from their annihilation, is not called a genuine convert. So it's pointed out that the story that was quoted in the context of the Chavetz Chaim was that there was a man called Count Valentin Potocki. He was a member of the Lithuanian aristocracy. He studied for priesthood in Vilna, and he recognized the truth, he recognized the MS, and being a very intellectually honest person, he converted to Judaism. He was called Avram ben Avram. He called himself, he chose his Hebrew name to be Avram, and he was called ben Avram. And he was discovered by the Roman Catholic Church and judged, tried, and it was decided that he should be burnt at the stake for his crime. And he contacted the Vilna Gaon. This was about 250 years ago. And he said, who will mourn me? Because I'm like a newborn child. I've become Jewish, so I have no family. Who will mourn my death? Who will think? I mean, what he was asking here was not just in terms of honor. He wasn't concerned about his honor. He was happy to leave the world. But mourning is a very, very important part of the soul's journey on its path. When a person sits Shiva, they help the neshama along its path to get to where it needs to get to. The mitzvahs that a person does during the Shiva, that we should never know, are holding the hand of the neshama through its journey. We take off our shoes because it cannot walk. The shoes are to the body what the shoes are to the body what the body is to the soul. And when the neshama has left its body, we mirror its experience, where its containers in the world, the blood relatives of a person who's nifta, sit Shiva to help it on its journey. The Vilna Gaon replied, Hashem, the father of all Geirei Tzedek, will mourn for you. Who could have a closer relative? So the second day of Shavuos is the yortzeit of this man who was killed. And the Chavetz Chaim would note the occasion every year with the following insight, and I wrote it down. He said, when Hashem approached the nations of the world to give the Torah, this is a very real thing. It's not a cute story for the kids of like the Malach coming and presenting the option of the Torah to the nations of the world. Hashem offered the Torah to the world, which means it was there for the taking. Ethics and morality, Jewish ethics and morality, were available, accessible to the Sar of every nation, to the neshamas of that nation. They were made aware of it, and they rejected it. However, a few individuals in every society said yes. But the vast majority drowned out their voices. Said the Chavetz Chaim, these are the righteous converts in every generation. Those neshamas joined the Jewish people and were there and received the Torah. They connected with us in the receiving of the Torah, but they were still entrenched, ingrained, whatever, absorbed in their cultures and nation. And when you meet converts, I don't know how well you know converts or how many converts you know, but it's an amazing thing. They like Balei Tshuva, but they like Balei Tshuva. They feel connected to Judaism always. It wasn't like, even though to us it's like out the blue, why'd you choose to be Jewish if you're not Jewish? But for them, there's a coming home feeling, like someone who discovers religious Judaism from having not been brought up with it, and says, oh, this is so me. Geirim very often feel the same way, always. almost always feel the same way. I taught a Giyaris once. She was in a relationship already with a Jew, and she knew that in order to get married, she had to convert. So I was like, can't really be bothered to teach her because she has ulterior motives. I didn't want to teach her. I was like, she's just getting married. She's just learning so that she can get married to this Jewish guy. She won't be interested. And I judged her unnecessarily because I never even met her. And 2 or 3 times after we'd learned together, I said to my husband, if he would leave her life, she would 100% still go through with it. He was her access point. Hashem sent him to her, whatever, she wanted to marry this Jewish guy, but there's a reason. There's a reason. It totally was in keeping and in sync with something that she wanted to do. In fact, he was less interested than her in the beginning. She was more interested. And she was the reason that they both became more involved. Anyway, that's very, very often the case. That's often been my experience, at least, is very much the case. So these righteous converts are neshamas who were descended from people who were at Har Sinai. They gathered round with us when the Torah was given and eternally purified and elevated by the experience, and then find their way physically back in later generations. And then we say, Ve'aleinu, Al Geri Tzedek, Ve'aleinu. Please, Hashem, have compassion on us. We identify ourselves with the righteous to remind ourselves that the mission of every Jew is to become a tzaddik, is to become a righteous. So we're associating ourselves with the righteous in kind of a hopeful, yearning way. As we're told at birth, we're told that there's a malach that comes to every birth that says to the child, Tahi tzaddik ve'al tahi rasha, be a tzaddik, be righteous. And then we say, V'tein sachar tov, l'chol haboitchem b'shemcha be'emes. Emunah is not enough. Bitachon is required. Please grant good reward to all those who have faith in you. Have faith, what we mean when we say have faith, we mean are loyal to you. Carry it through in action. The Ramban writes an axiom. He says, Kol ha-boteach ma'amin, v'lo kol ha-ma'amin boteach. Every person who has bitachon has emunah, but not everybody who has emunah has bitachon. Emunah is the knowledge, bitachon is the feeling. Basically, the actualization, the action. The Sas of a Rebbe says, why do we need to daven for tzaddikim? If they're such tzaddikim, they surely daven for themselves. They daven tons anyway. Why do we need to daven for them? The Sas of a Rebbe answered, we need to daven for them because they're so selfless, they don't daven for themselves enough. We need to daven for them because they're connected to the Jewish people and they don't daven for themselves enough. Another reason we daven for them, I was thinking perhaps, was a very chilling experience I had once living in Gateshead. I was zoichet to be connected to the Miller family, and I went to eat a Shabbos meal by Rabbi Miller Zatzal, Rabbi Mordechai Miller, and he was speaking about Yaakov and Yosef, and he mentioned something about the suffering of Yaakov. And he said that the tzaddikim of the generation, the tzaddikim of a society, of a community, of a town, and of a generation, are broad-shouldered and they suffer for the sins of the generation. They carry the generation. They're given the suffering to atone for the whole generation. It's discussed a little bit in the Ramchal and in the sources on the Ramchal, in the 12 reasons of why things happened, the book that I'm working on. The Ramchal describes there what this achieves, why this is necessary, what does it mean that they suffer for the generation. He says, one point I'll just tell you, is that they carry the burden that other people couldn't. In other words, if somebody who doesn't have strong developed muscles carried something very heavy, it would tear their muscles. They wouldn't get it from A to B. But a tzaddik who's developed, very, very developed spiritually, can sometimes carry the retribution, the sin, the tikkun for the door, because neshamas are all connected. Whereas it would make the door crack, it would make the human that did the sin crack. It wouldn't rectify the situation. The tzaddik can lift the whole picture by enduring something in the correct way themselves. It's a bigger story. It's a bigger picture than what I'm able to share with you right now. But I do want to say that when Rabbi Miller said this, his shoulders slumped. He was a very unwell man. He suffered terribly. At his 70th birthday, he said he'd like to make a l'chaim and thank Hashem for the two faculties in his body that worked, his mind and his mouth. And he wasn't exaggerating. He was totally unwell. He was like crippled, basically. He couldn't. There was this Yerusha system in Gateshead where you gave over your privileges to your best friend or your sister, whoever took over from you, if you had a privilege of something that you did for Rabbi Miller. So, for example, there'd be a girl waiting outside on the main road, waiting for Rabbi Miller to come in the morning, because when his wife would bring him, she would stand by the gate and she would open the gate when Rabbi Miller would arrive, because he couldn't do this. He had such bad arthritis in his whole body that he couldn't actually turn a handle. And that was one Yerusha, because you had one-on-one contact with Rabbi Miller for a few seconds. You opened the door for Rabbi Miller. Then another girl would be waiting on the inside by the building. He would hobble up the path, and then by the building, another girl would be standing there waiting for him. And when he'd arrive, she'd open the door to the building for him. And that was another Yerusha. And you had to be waiting there like clockwork, because he was always on time. And then another girl would be waiting on the inside of the door. When Rabbi Miller would get in, he would go like this, and she would take off his hat. And then he would go like this, and she would help him off with his coat. He couldn't take his coat off himself. Always glowing with joy. I was 17, I was so immature, I didn't at all appreciate what that must have meant at the time, that he couldn't dress, or he couldn't take off his own coat. He wore a neck brace, his neck was in a brace, he had cataracts in both his eyes, he really suffered. And he taught me the meaning of joy by his existence. Unbelievably happy person. Genuinely happy. Anyway, when at a Shabbos table, when they were eating, him and the Rebbetzin, he was saying this about Yaakov Avinu and Yosef carrying the burden of the generation. And his wife said, "Is it always like that?" And he said, "Yes, it's always like that." And that was it. They just carried on eating, and I was like, oh. The tzaddik always carries the door. So we daven for them because they're carrying us. They're the reasons that we live another day and another day and another day, and that we don't fill in the blanks, whatever, suffer, whatever. And put our chelek amongst them. And it's in the tefillah, because such people always exist. We daven to be like these people. On a musar note, on a character development note, is instructive. In other words, keep good company. Put our lot amongst them. Hashem, judge us like you judge them. Include us in them. The Torah is telling you, keep good company. Be amongst them. And have an external partnership with the tzaddik whenever possible. Support them, etc. They are supporting us. Okay, a lot more to say. I want to move on. We'll finish by saying we say this here, and we also say this in Ava Rabbah. We say, please don't let us be ashamed, because in you we trust. Shar Achnia in Chovos HaLevavos warns that in the future many people will, God forbid, be ashamed. People that might be considered themselves even righteous will be ashamed because of aveiros that they didn't realize did away with a lot of their mitzvahs. For example, Lashon Hara. A person could have done lots and lots of good things in their life, but Lashon Hara does away with a lot of your mitzvahs. The victim, right, gets transferred the merits of the speaker. The mechanism of why this works and how this works is fascinating. Maybe we'll learn about it in a Lakan Etzor the last bracha of Shemona Esrei. It's not a random punishment. It's a very tit for tat kind of consequence of a person's actions. So we daven that our trust in Hashem intensifies and we don't slip into wrongdoings. For example, things like Lashon Hara that could do away with a lot of our mitzvahs, causing us, God forbid, to be ashamed in the world to come. And then we say, Mishan u'miftach latzadikim, Baruch atah Hashem, you are the support, the mainstay, the crutch, the cane of tzadikim. You support them throughout. In the hard times, Hashem fortifies them with power to endure. So the suffering that we not project, but we kind of think that they go through, they don't go through. Because they're supported and reinforced. Are you following me? A bodybuilder pays for the privilege of going to lift those heavy weights in the gym. A tzaddik bears his life in a similar way. There's a brilliant TED talk, you can look it up, by a man called Anthony Gordon. Hanan Gordon is his Hebrew name. He lives in LA. He's a family friend of my parents from many, many years ago. And he supports and is a life coach to some of the world's most famous personalities. He runs a life coaching organization. And he told us how some of the most wealthy people in the world and some of the most famous people in the world, especially in the industry of sports, he specializes in, have told him, he said he coaches them, and they're not Jewish, but they've told him that some of the most incredible experiences in their lives have been meals at a Shabbos table. And he teaches them basically Torah, in terms of values, and explains to them, and his TED talk is all about this. He came to London to do this TED talk live. It wasn't a Jewish thing at all, but he was explaining how hard isn't bad, basically. Look up his TED talk. It was very recent. He was here a few weeks ago. Anthony Gordon. He just speaks for 10 minutes. And his motto is about how life is not about, he said, the purpose of life is not about how to avoid the showers, but rather how to dance in the rain. I love that. That hard isn't bad is a message that we don't really know about hearing. We don't like to absorb. What will make you happy is not the absence of pain. Interesting. Mishan u'miftach latzadikim. That is a person's greatest, should be, ideally, a person's greatest tefillah. When you have this fortification of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and you know that everything that you're going through in life is meaningful, deeply meaningful, that there's no mistakes, that there's nothing random, that is totally there to help you and coach you and build you into who you need to become, then when you integrate this message and the more trust you have in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more you build yourself in your relationship with your Creator and your essential elemental being, your spiritual self, then the more you see the life's challenges as the building blocks to who you need to become, as those weights that the bodybuilder pays in order to suffer in the process of lifting. Ne'emanus. That's all the concept of ne'emanus. Ne'emanus means loyalty and faithfulness. Staying loyal and faithful to what you know to be true. Building your knowledge of that truth and being faithful to it. Leaning on it because it is reliable. Is the emunah that we were given at Yetzias Mitzrayim that was further transformed in the splitting of the sea experience, where we saw with our eyes and experienced with our bodies and our minds the reliability of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what it means. Ve'yaminu b'Hashem u'b'Moshe Avdoi. They don't believe in something blindly. They connected to it. They integrated it. They absorbed their connection even further. They bonded themselves. We bonded ourselves. We bond ourselves to something that is reliable and will be there and will come through. Questions? You got a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask practically, when you're talking about tzaddikim, how we like connect to them and said you should link and stuff to something. Is that just Tefillah? Or like meeting with people?
Yes, both. Not easy. Not easy. Not necessarily a relationship, but connection to. Connection to. Find whoever you can find of greatness and make a connection. When you go to Israel, find the people who speak to me. I'll tell you who's accessible, who's not accessible, how you can get into, where you can get into. There's women, not necessarily men. Women of astounding greatness. And try and get connected to them. I don't have a kesher with all of them, but I go get a bracha. Yeah, for sure. And in davening to them. Davening for them, chas v'shalom, not to them. Yeah? Big mistake. Out there in the world. Okay, V'li Yerushalayim. Moving on. V'li Yerushalayim, a bracha about Yerushalayim. So, we're asking Hashem to return to Yerushalayim, even now in its state of destruction. Even though the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, the holiness that was dedicated to Yerushalayim, some still remains there. We ask for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence to be felt, even if we're not worthy of feeling it in the way that we formerly did, so that we can yearn for His complete presence. I'm reading to you from the Mefarshim, a digest of what I've collected. Okay, we daven that we feel Hashem's presence, so that we can yearn for what it really ought to be. If Hashem's Shechina would be totally gone, we'd have no way of relating to Him. Then we certainly wouldn't yearn for the complete Yeshua, for the complete redemption. Hashem's maintaining some of His holiness here allows our souls to feel the reality that was once part and parcel of the Jews' daily life in Yerushalayim. When we feel a little bit of that holiness, we actually yearn for it to return to our lives. I don't know if you can relate to what I'm saying, but a lot of what people feel when they go to places of Kedusha, like let's say the intense ones, the Koisel or Keva Rachel, you feel a joy of being home, but you feel a deep sense of yearning for more. That connection that a lot of people feel in those places, and I'm not talking about just holy, connected, spiritually attuned people like you. I'm talking about unaffiliated people feel something usually when they go to places of Kedusha. There's a feeling of lack that you're actually experiencing, of a yearning for what it could be. And it's because you've had a taster. It's like when you start eating when you're very hungry, you realize how hungry you were. Like when you sit down and you're very tired, you realize how tired you are. It's the getting something that whets your appetite for more of that thing. That's what we're davening for in this bracha. In terms of kavana, I don't live in Yerushalayim, I don't go there often enough. Why is this part of my daily tefillah? We're saying Berachim Tashuv now, bring more Kedusha into the world. You're asking for the Shechina of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to come into the world more, so that we can yearn and bring about the full redemption. We're going to learn about in yearning soon, is really how we rebuild. When you yearn for something, you're drawing it. When you yearn for ruchnias, when you yearn for something, for anything actually, you draw that thing down into reality, because you've made a vessel and you've created a suction. That's why it says, Lo yavoi Yerushalayim shel mala. We all know it from the song, but it's a Gemara. Ad she'avoi Yerushalayim shel mata. I will not come to the Jerusalem on high, to the Jerusalem on high, until I come into the Jerusalem on low. In other words, one triggers, one brings about the other. It means you turned the tap on. So you connected the channel. So you're bringing it about. The presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Israel is stronger than anywhere else. And that's why it has the impact on most Jews who go there. A Jew in Israel has the capacity to know that Jewish people today are not what we were, but at the same time, you feel a strong presence of Hashem there. V'Yerushalayim ircha, Rav Schwab writes, Rav Schwab said, your city. We're referring to a city that can be truly called Hashem's city. The present Yerushalayim cannot be described as Hashem's city, even with all the, greatness and yeshivas and stuff that's there, and the people that serve Hashem. Hashem's city, we mean like, that on steroids, whatever. like in Mariv, people in Daven Mariv say, Yireh Eneinu v'yismach libenu, Sagal nafsheni b'shu'ascha be'emes, with your true salvation. And then we say, please build it, binyan olam, an eternal structure. The third Beis HaMikdash will be built eternally. In other words, it will not be subject to destruction. It cannot be destroyed. That's what we're yearning for. We're yearning for a return of something that will not then dwindle and die, that will last forever. The presence of Yerushalayim, of the Shekhinah in Yerushalayim will be visible and tangible. It says as fiery walls, whatever this means. The other Batei Mikdash, the two Beis HaMikdash that we had and were destroyed, were built by people with physical materials. Those do not last and have limitations. The third Beis HaMikdash, it says, will be built in a way that cannot be destroyed, because the Jews will have reached such spiritual heights. Our relationship will transcend the laws of nature, and it says it will be built with a heavenly fire, passion, desire, I don't know, whatever fire represents. Doesn't mean that it doesn't not mean practically also, but we don't know what it will actually look like and be like. But it will be built of an indestructible material, an elevated, indestructible nature. The levels of spirituality will be so all-consuming, created of a burning desire, say the Mefarshim, to come close to Hashem. The devotion, the love, so intense that it will build a structure that cannot be destroyed. You know, a person who came close to this, the person who achieved this, was David HaMelech. It says David HaMelech was told he couldn't build the Beis HaMikdash, right? Because it says his hands were dipped in blood. His hands were soaked in blood of fighting wars for Hashem, removing evil from the world, destroying evil, killing people who were opposed the truth, and the Beis HaMikdash is a place of peace, so David HaMelech couldn't build it. So Shlomo, Mr. Shalom, right, his son, was able to build the Beis HaMikdash. He came from David HaMelech, who was the fighter and who removed the bad from the world, but it had to be built only through Shlomo HaMelech. So explained Rabbi Miller amazingly. He says, what do you mean David HaMelech fought wars for Hashem? His hands weren't dirty with blood. He didn't have blood on his hands because he caused damage, destruction in the world. He only removed the evil. Surely that should qualify him to build the Beis HaMikdash. Why is he not allowed to build the Beis HaMikdash? So I don't remember where he quoted, maybe a medrash. He said David HaMelech was told, you can't build the Beis HaMikdash because your hands were dipped in blood. Because you lost blood in the process of wanting to build the Beis HaMikdash. So you are not allowed to build the Beis HaMikdash, because if you build it, the blood that's being referred to here is the blood that you lost. He built it with Mesiras Nefesh. He gave of his life so much. He lost his blood in the process, say the Mefarshim. If he would build it, it would never be destroyed. When you build something with self-sacrifice, you invest yourself in it, then it has kiyum. So the Mesiras Nefesh that David HaMelech experienced in his life, of what he gave up. He says, I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, he lost his blood, his life force, in making a space for Hashem in this world. The risk of David HaMelech building the Beis HaMikdash, as the Medrash, is such that if he were to build the Beis HaMikdash, it could never be destroyed. And Hashem says, and what will be when the Jews go wrong? I won't be able to extract my anger. I won't be able to mete out punishment. It doesn't mean destructive punishment. It means corrective punishment. I won't be able to heal the Jewish people by removing the sticks and stones of the structure. If it was built by blood, it will be eternal. And then I'll have to take them themselves. The rectification will have to come through the suffering of the Jewish people themselves. So I'd rather exert my wrath on sticks and stones. It will affect the Jewish people deeply and will bring them to tshuva, but it's one step removed, and so you shouldn't build the Beis HaMikdash David HaMelech. It has to be through Shlomo. That's one of the Mefarshim. Yes?
So why is it different with why do they not see an argument with the third Beis HaMikdash?
It is, and will be built through our experience, and therefore never be destroyed.
Then where will God place his anger?
Eternal. Tikkun. It will come to a point where there will be no more tikkun necessary post that. We'll have ticked all the boxes. We'll have built everything that needs to be built. We'll have rectified everything that needs to be fixed. We weren't there yet when it was in David HaMelech's stage in history. There was a long way to go. Yeah? He brought the world 2/3 to its perfection, put it that way. Right? When he was ready to build the Beis HaMikdash, there was still history to unfold. Hadn't come to where it needed to get to. Exactly the same point. Excellent. Hashem will build it, it says. There's lots of midrashim. Hashem will build it using sapphires, rubies, other precious stones. The stones will be enormous. Yerushalayim will be rebuilt in Shamayim, the Gemara says. I don't know. It says a Talmud in the Gemara. It says a Talmud of Rav Yochanan saw malachim cutting huge pieces of stones to size in a dream as a result of people's actions. Okay, a few more things I want to say to you on this, to tell you about this. What builds this Beis HaMikdash? So yes, we were told mitzvahs and good deeds and good thoughts and good actions in the world, but primarily, much more than that, say the sources here, is the yearning. When we say V'Yerushalayim Ircha, when we say L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, when we say Uvnei Yerushalayim in benching, the more we can connect to what this means, and this is what we're going to explain, the more we build Yerushalayim. Every tear shed on Tisha B'Av is the cultivation of the emunah that builds this Jerusalem. They're all spiritual diamonds, spiritual realities that bring this reality into existence and bring it down. And that's why we say, as Tzemach David, we're going to learn soon, we say that it's going to be a reincarnation of this Davidic spark. In the Brach of Yerushalayim, we say, Yerushalayim and David are inseparable. Yeah? To be a full Yerushalayim, you need a Davidic dynasty. There needs to be a Davidic neshama involved there. There will be an aspect of David HaMelech resurrected. The reason for this is not a subject tonight. It's a fascinating subject, but it's the reality of every spiritual concept lives in the world in 3 dimensions. Again, not our subject, and it's a fascinating subject to learn about another time maybe. Ashan. Oilam Shana Nefesh. Ashan means smoke. Behar Sinai Ashan Kula. It says when Hashem arrived in the world, the mountain was covered in smoke, mist, Ashan, and this Ashan stands for Olam Shana Nefesh, said the Mefarshim. Olam means place, Shana means time, Nefesh means human. Every spiritual concept, every Torah concept lives in the world in these 3 dimensions: place, time, person. The concept of Yerushalayim, the Kedusha, is Mitzion Teitzei Torah, is in time, in place, and in person. In place, it's Yerushalayim. In person, it's David HaMelech. In time, it's Shabbos. And that's why Lechadoidi, we daven for Yerushalayim. It's a coming home. It's the connection of this world to the spiritual reality. But again, that's a bigger subject. And every topic in Torah you'll find in person, in place, and in time. Because they're the three dimensions of reality that all need to be rectified and elevated. Okay. So David HaMelech is integral to Yerushalayim. And that's why there's such a focus on davening for Yerushalayim and the Beis HaMikdash, always on Shabbos. The bracha concludes, Baruch Atah Hashem, Boine Yerushalayim. The building of Yerushalayim is in the process of being built now. Boine, ongoing throughout Golus. Just as very deep foundations need to be laid for a very big structure. I'll never forget, my grandparents had a flat in Netanya, and when we lived in Israel, we used to go there in the summer holidays. And we went there, and it was on the 9th floor. And the building next door was being renovated from its foundations. It was like destroyed, demolished, and being renovated. And it was a very, very tall building. There must have been 20 floors. You know Nizza, that main road opposite the beach? So there's some very tall buildings there. And we were in one of them. And the building next door was completely destroyed and demolished and was going to be rebuilt anew. And they were laying the foundations during our summer holiday. I have never seen such deep pits dug. And it just kept going. For the whole 2 weeks that we were there, they just dug deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I remember learning this afterwards and saying, from how deep it goes, you know how high it will go. The deeper the hole, the higher the structure. The bigger structure will rise. So too have events in history been preparatory for the foundation of rebuilding this future Yerushalayim. The Golus, the long, hard Golus, is this deep, dark underground pit into which the foundations of this Yerushalayim is going to be laid. I was having a very, very hard anticlimax post-Pesach day the other day. Very, very difficult day. And nothing was working out. Nothing. I was trying to achieve so much. And everything was falling flat. It was just falling short. It wasn't just my perfectionism. It really wasn't going. Like I was jinxed. And I was very frustrated. Very, very frustrated. And I was driving to this meeting without the right information, without all the paperwork that I needed. I was very frustrated. And I was driving down Finchley Road. I came out of where bread is on Temple Fortune, and I was driving Finchley Road, and a car cut in front of me. Okay, nothing terrible, cut in front of me, and it was driving, and then as I drove a few meters ahead, I was just spacing out looking at it, and its number plate said Gullus, G4LUT, and it drove the whole way in front of me. I was going to turn left, it turned left first. I was going to turn right, it turned right in front of me. The whole way to my meeting, this Gullus stared me in the face, and I just smiled. It was such a gift from Hashem. That and made me. I hadn't thought about Golus as being a factor, as the spanner in the works of really why we struggle. It really is the underlying reason. It wasn't my lack of effort. It wasn't my lack of yearning. It wasn't my not wanting it enough or doing the right thing enough. There's just blocks. There are huge blocks in the way of what we're trying to achieve, and they're called Golus. I drove the whole way. When I got to my appointment, I was going to turn into a road, and it was going to be the second house on the left, and it turned right. There. It was very weird and very amazing. And then I went into my meeting, and when I came out of my meeting, it was like an hour later, or however long later, I don't know how long I was there. I came out, it was maybe shorter. Yeah, it was much shorter. I wasn't there for long. I wasn't there for long at all. I came out and I went into my car and I drove home. And on my way home, driving through the back streets of Gold's Green, 2 blocks down, it was parked there. My Gullus mobile, just chilling. So I hadn't seen who the driver was. And this is totally unrelated. It doesn't end happily ever after. It was actually part of my frustration. But I drove up to the car, slowed down. I was like, you made my day. I wanted to say it was a man. And I wanted to say to him, just thank you for being my reminder and my connector to Hashem. And it was this very non-Jewish looking, other religion, shall we say, human. And I was like, I love your number plate. He's like, I bought it from a Jew. And I bought it from a Jew. I don't know what it means. I bought it from Jess, and I love it. I love his amazing number plate. I said to him, made my day. He bought his car from a Jew. Here's his Gullus. Even the car is strayed from its Jewish source. It was so funny. I was like, I just wanted to thank him. Anyway, thank him out there for reminding me that our blocks come from Gullus. And this is what I am trying to teach you tonight. One of the most important things to realize when we yearn for Mashiach is not that you're expected to know what Mashiach is about. You're not expected to know what Yerushalayim in its perfection is about. You've never seen the Beis HaMikdash. You're not supposed to mourn on Tisha B'Av for a Beis HaMikdash that you didn't know. You were born into this darkness. The example my husband brings, and I don't remember where he heard this from. I remember him telling me this also, but I don't remember where. But he said, in Yoshani Yom Kippur davening, there was a mashal brought of a person being brought up in this pit, and this pit is dark, and there's toxic stuff there, and it's just terrible. And once a year, the king walks past, and he looks down into the pit, and he says, "What can I do for you?" And people say, "Could we have better lighting down here? And could you arrange us some, better plumbing and pipes for the water and like the sewage drainage, because this pit's really getting grimy. And can we have some more food supplies? Could you send us better, more frequent food supplies?" And the king's taking notes, and he says, "I'm here to provide you all you need. Tell me what your needs are, and I'll provide." So he said one of the reasons that on Rosh Hashanah we don't ask for things on Rosh Hashanah when the king is there is because the bakasha should be, "Get me out of this pit!" The request is, bring about a perfected world. We take our pit as reality and we say, "Could you please sort out the lighting? Could you please bring us more frequent transport? Could you please," we don't want to up our existence in this reality. We want a change of reality. And realizing and recognizing, one of the 3 questions a human being is going to be asked when they go to the higher world is, did you yearn for Mashiach? And it's not a fair question, because I was not born into Mashiach. I don't know what Mashiach is about. How can a person be judged? One of the main judgment questions is going to be, did you yearn for Mashiach? Explain the sources. It doesn't mean that you long for the Beis HaMikdash. You're not expected to know what the Beis HaMikdash is about. But did you mourn your blockages? Did you mourn the pit? Did you see that you didn't have to live in this reality? When my father was writing his book for teenagers, he asked Rav Moshe Shapiro what the message to teenagers should be. He said, "What should we give? What is the message to teenagers today?" Rav Moshe said, "Tell them that the world does not look like it's meant to." He said, "Tell the children of today that the experience that they're experiencing, that the reality that we're living in is not what it's meant to be." To yearn for Mashiach means to feel your pain. To sit on the floor at Tisha B'Av and to cry for what you could be. For where you come up against the blocks and the brick walls in your personality, in terms of connection to the light inside of you, that you're expected to cry for. Not to just say, "Oh, stop, life's like that. This is my reality. I'll make a little bit of a change. Yeah, I'll try and yearn for a bit of, And that's what it means. You will see its rebuilding. If you mourn for Jerusalem, you will see its rebuilding, because you've created a taste for that commodity. If you yearn to be more than you are, and the gates are locked, you come up against the blockages in your personality, in your midas, in your achieving something meaningful in your life. That's galus. And that's what you're going to be held accountable for. Did you get comfortable with the limitations, or did you yearn for them to change? And that is what we're asking for in B'li Yerushalayim. Hashem has been digging these foundations of the future Jerusalem since the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And at the time of Binyan, Beis HaMikdash, at the time of Mashiach, it will be rebuilt. Every challenge that we undergo, the fires of the Holocausts of history, the fires of Mesiras Nefesh of people, every sad event, every difficulty is contributing to these walls. The Sfas Emes writes that every mitzvah that's observed when the physical structure will be built will be there, because it's the equivalent, it's the spiritual structure. So it will have real kiyum, it will have real existence, the mitzvahs. And like I said, Kisei David Avdecha, the seat of David, where he resides, where he lives, will be there because of his Mesiras Nefesh, like I said. Liboy Leiv Chol Yisrael. The blood that he spilt means the life force that he lost, not just in his being Moser Nefesh, going beyond what's humanly expected of a human, but it also means emotionally. King David was called Liboy Lev Kol Yisrael. His heart is the heart of the whole Jewish people. He experienced every experience that a human could experience. And why Tehillim is so powerful is because he sings to Hashem throughout. Everybody finds themselves in Tehillim because King David experienced everything. Tragedy, trauma, challenges, and joys. The full spectrum of human emotion, human experience, was King David's life, was David HaMelech's life. And throughout it all, he connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's what it means, Mesiras Nefesh. He dedicated his life to this tenacious connection to Hashem, and saw it all for what it really is. It's from Hashem. So it's good. Some blessings are revealed blessings, some blessings are hidden blessings, but they're all blessings. And he saw it as such. And that's why he's the me'ached of the Jewish people. He rectifies and unifies the Jewish people. Melech is Oisios Kulam. You know the Aleph base is written Aleph base Gimel Dalet Hey Vav Zayin Ches Tes Yud 10, and then the next letters that follow are Kaf Lamed Mem Kulam, which means everything. 10 is the unit, and then Kulam is everyone. Goes back on the unit, and those letters spelled backwards is Melech, because the king reigns on the Kulam. Yeah, unifies the people, unites the people because he represents the people. King David is this macro neshama that will connect us all to each other because everyone will find themselves in him, so to speak. And that's why Tehillim is what it is. The little gift that he left us. Hashem let David HaMelech build the foundations, but the structure could not be built by him for the reasons that we discussed. He helps us yearn for the Beis HaMikdash, for the shleimus, for the perfection, for the rectification of the world, for the ultimate redemption. And these yearnings are the spiritual creations that will eventually bear fruit. Hashem's presence is not found in a fixed place, but ironically, and I want to finish with this, it is felt where people feel anguish over his absence. Ironically, your most connected tefillahs are usually, most people feel, are their saddest tefillahs. When you're in the most pain, you find the most connection. It's ironic, it's sad. But there's a saying, Ein davar yoter shalem milev shabur. There's nothing more whole than a broken heart. The spiritual mechanism of this. Why? Why is nothing more whole than something broken? So you'd say, well, when it's whole, it could still be broken. So it hasn't reached its full cycle. It's not true. It's more whole if it's whole than if it's broken. But when that brokenness is connected to infinity, connected to Hashem, when you feel that you're only a broken child of a broken vessel, and that you come from something higher, there's no wholeness more than that. You've just connected yourself to eternity. If you think that you're whole, wholeness is an illusion, basically. If you think that you're whole and that you're complete, then you're standing more fragmented than any fragment. Are you hearing me? This is very deep. Please hear me. If you recognize your fragmentation in a spiritual sense, then you're logging in, you're linking yourself to all of eternity. So you swell to the proportions that are, bigger than the universe. Because now you become a link you become linked to something way bigger than your finite self. And that's the deliciousness of pain. If you want to learn the deepest psychology of people that seek to feel pain, or that are wallowing, or they want to sulk, or whatever it is, right? It can be as superficial as wanting to sulk. When you're in a place of very raw pain and you channel that pain, I'm not talking about doing, God forbid, self-destructive behavior or wallowing in a depressed kind of pain state, but taking your pain to the right place. Tefillah. Those are some of the most connected moments that people describe. Being in a very dark space, in a very blocked space, in a very in need of Hashem space, and going there, feeling that experience, ironically, paradoxically, will connect you the most. It's hard to put into words, but if you've experienced it, you know what I mean. Some questions. Yeah. Don't ask me questions, please don't ask me questions. Go ahead. Yes.
No, I just wanted to ask, in Mitzrayim, like, Klal Yisrael were like, they were so out of breath from the work, even just physically, they couldn't even daven because of the difficulty. Not even emotionally they couldn't connect, but like, just, they were like, there was so much in slavery there, they just couldn't even connect. So isn't it sometimes like that, like, sometimes joyous tefillahs are much more focused because you have like the breathing space to connect, whereas like when a person is like, just got loads of stuff they're worried about, just even physically, not even getting to spirituality, just physically they can't connect as much. So sometimes our difficulty like cut you off from tefillah.
Yes, very powerful question, very important question. I will address it. Other questions? Okay, so I'll tell you, it's a hard subject, and I have been there, and I'm gonna explain to you. The work of tefillah, really, this is the introduction to all tefillah, is on the one hand feeling absolute joy and connectivity and serenity and the meditative state of all's right with the world that the Buddhists describe. Buddhism describes, and other spiritual systems describe prayer as just aligning yourself with what his plan is. So if you can take your suffering or your situation and say, actually it's all good and Hashem's in control and everything's fine and right, and work on joy, that is more the focus of tefillah, in a way, right? And can take you to a very, very high place of saying all's right with the world, everything's okay. On the one hand. On the other hand, we're told that tefillah should be bakasha. And the climax and crescendo of the Jewish tefillah is asking for things, which means accessing my needs in this area. I wasn't feeling particularly needy in Parnasa, but then I get to Baruch Aleinu, and I'm supposed to pour out my heart in need in the bakasha of Parnasa. And if not for me, for the Jewish people and for the world. And that's the work of tefillah. And it seems paradoxical. On the one hand, they say, Mevarech Hashanim, thank you Hashem, all's right with my world. On the other hand, Baruch Aleinu. And these two expressions of self are both fundamental and necessary in tefillah. You've somehow got to be in both places at the same time. You've got to be in an all's right with the world. Hashem is in control. He loves me. He's right here, right now. He wants the best for me, and everything's just glorious, marvelous, and fine. On the other hand, please, can I have? It's a broad subject. It's a very broad subject. It needs a lot more understanding than what I've just told you, but the quandary that you have is from a very real place. How do you hold these two things in your head at the same time? Sarah Imeinu, it says, she davened to Hashem with deep yearning and need for a child all those years. But at the same time, it says, she was 127 when she died, because all her years were equal. We know that 120 and 7 in the context of the beauty that was described, right? That's the Rashi there. But other Mefarshim say, Kulam Shavin Latova. Her years were all equal. She was the same at 100 as she was at 220, as the same as she was 7. Huh? You're telling me she was the same? In other words, in her happiness levels, she was the same, Sarah, at 100 as she was at 220. That makes no sense. You're telling me she was the same happy when she had Yitzchak to when she didn't have Yitzchak. When she was 60 and 70 and yearning for a child. But what her tefillah wasn't a banging on the doors of heaven and Hashem saying to her, you know what, you've davened for me for 90 years, we want this, here you go, you've convinced me. It wasn't that at all. It was an elevation of self. So that when she got to that stage, she was now able to be a mother of the Jewish people, of a Yitzchak. Tefillah wasn't a chore. It wasn't like, oh, I've davened for today. Her tefillah was so connected to feeling absolutely okay with her reality right here, right now. It was a deep meditative experiential process of feeling like HaKadosh Baruch Hu was experiencing Hashem's light and love and connection. And she was totally fulfilled and totally aligned and totally serene with her reality. That's what it means that she davened. At the same time, she yearned for a child because she said, Hashem, you made me a woman and I have this need. And so in her tefillah, in this yearning, She built herself. But it's sandwiched with this Shevach and Hodah of Shemona Esrei, which is, thank you Hashem for everything you've given to me. You are kind. You've given me needs. You are kind. That's the Amidah. It's reinforcing our understanding of this. So then why daven for things at all? Why express any needs? Why not just work on this acceptance of all the gifts in our life and just trust? Why do we need needs at all? And that we don't have time to discuss tonight. Maybe we'll go into it more next week. What's the purpose of then asking for things? If it's just going to make me upset, it's going to make me feel lackings, even in places that I don't necessarily have lackings, like I just said to you. What if I feel that my das is sufficient? What if I feel that my healing, why do I need to feel for other people's healing? It just makes me sad. It makes me see where there's empty spaces in the world. I want to see where there's full spaces. Why shouldn't I focus on the joy in life? Very important subject. One last thing I'll say, and that is when a person is in tremendous suffering, sometimes it's not possible to daven. It's harder to daven because pain is isolating. When you're going through a difficult situation, you feel that nobody else understands you. And you feel that Hashem doesn't care. Because isolation in relationships, right? Relationships is the same as relationships. Your relationship with other people is a mirror of relationship with Hashem. So if you feel in an isolated place, because no one understands where you are, no one can relate, or no one's going through this or whatever it is, you feel also very isolated, usually from Hashem. Because you say, if you're a loving, kind God, why are you putting me through this? Pain is a very isolating experience. It's a huge test. All challenges are a huge test of your faith. Are you going to sign out of the relationship, or are you going to see this as an expression of Hashem's care and love for you, an invitation to grow? It's a massive nisayon, because the experience of pain is isolating. It makes you feel like Hashem is not here. It makes you feel like Hashem doesn't care. It makes you feel like Hashem doesn't know, or doesn't understand, or doesn't care, God forbid. That's the experience of pain. What's a Jew supposed to do in that experience? Says the Dubra Magid, David HaMelech says, Va'ani Tefillah. Va'ani Tefillah means to show up. There's two types of poor people that come collecting. One is a very well-dressed person in a three-piece suit. Have I told you this yet? Before? Yeah, in a three-piece suit, he comes collecting for a very worthy cause, and he asks if he can come inside, and you sit him down, and he takes out his very latest model laptop and a brilliantly made slideshow with all the very good quality paper, kind of pamphlets and leaflets, and he describes his cause. Then there's another type of person that comes collecting, and he stands at your door in tatters and rags, with an emaciated, skinny frame, and he looks hungry and haggard and worn. He doesn't have to open his mouth. Beggar B doesn't have to open his mouth. Doesn't have to explain the cause. Says David HaMelech, Va'ani Tefillah. Sometimes you're in such a sorry state that you are the prayer. You don't need lots of words. You don't need a Shemona Esrei. You just need to show up at the door. Va'ani Tefillah means you go to Hashem with who you are. There's just a cry for help. Don't log out of your relationship with Hashem. I've met many people, unfortunately, who have very hard lives, and they say, yeah, and I'll stop covering my hair. Because why should I cover my hair? Oh yeah, and I'm wearing trousers, because she doesn't gain. One drop she doesn't gain from that. She feels better. She felt isolated, that Hashem wasn't interested, or that Hashem wasn't involved. That was her test. And to sign out of a relationship makes her more isolated. I'm not saying wearing skirts is easy. I'm not saying covering your hair is easy. But to log out of a relationship as a result of suffering is losing the battle. It doesn't mean it's not hard. It's hugely hard. But don't log out. Don't say the words, Hashem doesn't care. Don't say the words, Hashem hates me. Or Hashem's ignored me, or he doesn't know what's important. Think the thoughts that you need to think. Vent them to someone who can contain you, like someone will hold you a bucket for you to throw up in. Say your garbage. Let them hold your bucket. Very often when I vent, I say, the backdrop is joy. But now I need a vent. The backdrop is joy. Really, I know it's all for the good, it's all fine, but why? Or whatever it is, right? It's not an easy subject. Suffering is not an easy subject. But the main key is to see it as a test. As a parent holding a child through a very difficult, painful procedure. That's building something huge. We're going to learn more about bakashas next week. That's a very important subject. We will come back to it. But the nakuda that we wanted to share, main nakuda about Yerushalayim and about yearning for Mashiach, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence will be felt ironically in this state of galus, where people most yearn for it. So when you're asked in Shamayim, one day after a full life, please God, when a person's soul goes up and they're judged and they're asked, did you yearn for Mashiach? It means, did you build your perfection? How do you most profoundly build your perfection? By yearning for perfection. Did you come to where you needed to come in your life? Did your blocks and challenges hurt you? Then that's what builds you. And that's the clue to this. Is it says when a person mourns for Jerusalem, they will merit and see its rebuilding. It doesn't mean in the future, it means now. It means now. It means now. It means that when you daven and you yearn from a place of brokenness, you will be rectified and healed here and now. Because hard isn't always bad. It's that fortification that you'll receive to endure what you go through on another level. And you bring Mashiach in the here and now. I'll finish with a story. If you have to go, please go. Oh my gosh, it's 20 to 10. No, remind me to tell you a story about the Gadol in Tzfat next week. Yeah, there was a lunatic in Tzfat who went up to the mountain, a nearby mountain, and he wrapped himself in a talis, and he blew a shofar. And the Hasidim rushed into the Rebbe's office and said, Rebbe, is it true that Mashiach's here? Yeah, remind me that that's the story I want to tell you next week. My next episode was 20 to 10. My babysitter's going to...